And appreciate all of you for joining us on this, Zoom webinar. This is going to be a ton of value, a ton of great information, and I'm stoked. I'm stoked for it. So myself being a real estate, some of you know me, some of you, most of you know me, but as a realtor, as a dad, as a family man, as a real estate investor as well, it's very important to have your assets and have what you own, have it established in a trust. It's very important to make sure we plan accordingly. And so this webinar, I'm not selling anything. We're not here to sell anything, but we're here to provide value and provide education. So this evening, I want to introduce Colleen Robinson with Landon, Rainwater, and Robinson Law Firm. You mind saying hello?
Hi, everybody.
So she's going to do it's going to be amazing. She's going to talk us through the estate planning process, and she's got a ton of value to share with us. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, raise your hand if you'd like, and we'll be here to get those answers for you.
I'll just say, if you could, we'll answer the questions at the end, so don't worry. You will have plenty of time to get all of your answers, your questions answered, just so that we could get through the material. So don't think I'm ignoring you, or Star, my client services director, is here as well. So you could always message Star too, and she'll get the questions to me as well. So don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm just trying to get through so everyone can get the information. So if it's okay with everybody, I will get started.
Take it away.
All right. So give me 3 seconds. So first, I just want to say thank you to Jake and Kate for inviting me to participate and to present this information to you this evening. And thank you as well for taking the time out on your evening, whatever you have going on from your family, or your friends, or your social activities. I really appreciate you being here, because I believe that the information that we're going to be sharing with you tonight is extremely important. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about doing this and doing these types of presentations is because there's so much misunderstanding when it comes around to what is estate planning, what is a trust, and what is a will. So my goal for this evening is that you have a better understanding of not only of a will and a trust, and also the probate process. And I can tell you this right now, if you're one of those people that don't know what those are, and maybe don't know how the probate or what probate court is, you're okay. That's okay, because unless you've experienced it for yourself, or you've seen these documents, or you understand how they work, there's no reason for you to know those things. So there's no dumb questions. Feel free to either put your questions in the chat, or you can private message them as well, and we can get back to you offline. I just want you guys to have all the information, so you know how to protect what's most important to you. So we pay a lot for our headshots. So here's my headshot right here, but I am from Landon, Rainwater, Robinson. I'm a partner there. I've been an attorney for the last 14 years here in Southern California, and I've appeared in every courthouse from up in LA, out to Indio, down to Chula Vista, so almost down to the Mexican border. And I've dealt with a lot of families in conflict. And my background was primarily in family law, so that's divorces and custody and domestic violence. And dealing with a lot of conflict, what I've done translating that into my estate planning practice is, how can we avoid conflict? How can we avoid putting our family in a situation where we're opening them up to conflict? And conflict can mean a lot of different things. One, it's the unknown of having to go through a probate court when maybe you weren't anticipating from having to do that. One is having a really loosey-goosey type of plan that's going to invite conflict, maybe amongst our kids, or maybe amongst our family and friends. So it's taking all these different concepts, and I've dealt with a lot of different people and a lot of different families. And what can we do today that's going to make a difference when we're no longer here? Because I'm a parent as well. As a parent, we're peacemakers. We're usually the neutral ground between all of our kids. And if we're not there to do that, what are we leaving behind to avoid that type of situation where it can torpedo family relationships? So you're in the absolute right place today if you have someone or something you care about and that you want to protect. If you have children, If you don't know who to name for guardians, like that's a huge issue with a lot of parents with minor kids. They stop before they get started because of the decision fatigue. You've never met with an attorney before. I try not to be scary. I don't bite, I promise. And again, I just want to get you guys all the information that you need. And maybe you just don't know where to start with the estate planning process. So these are all the information that we're going to give you today. The reality is with estate planning is that it's not about us. You do get that peace of mind when it's done. You can finally cross it off of your list, but it's really not about us. It's about the people we love the most, because they're going to be the ones to know whether or not you lived up to your promises. I took care of it, because I deal with a lot of clients who family has passed away, whether it's their parents or whomever, and they're like, why are we in this situation? My dad said he took care of it. But maybe that's not always the situation. So we definitely don't want to leave a mess behind. So this is my family. As I mentioned, I live here and I live in San Diego County as well. I have 3 kids under the age of 6. So is my life crazy? Yes, it is. They're not here as to why it's quiet back here. And that's my husband, Keith. He's in law enforcement for the city of San Diego. But the reason why I share this, or share a little bit about myself, is that I've been in the same situation as you have, thinking of what I can do for my family to protect my family. And then also when I see their pictures, I know that it grounds me in knowing that I've done everything I can to make sure that my kids are always going to be taken care of appropriately and by people I want to raise them if me and my husband can't do it. And that we have the assets that aren't going to go through court as well. So this is my oldest, Declan. He's 6. My middle child, he's almost 5. He turns 5 on Sunday. And then my baby, who really is the creator of all chaos. He's almost 2 years old. And this is Star. So Star's here with me tonight. She's my client services director. And we are a team of moms. And what we're doing, as I mentioned before, is that we're on a crusade to just educate and help people protect their own families, just as we have done with our own estate plans as well. So as I mentioned before, my why is wanting to protect my kids and also other children, because as a litigator in family law, I dealt with a lot of custody cases. That has always been my passion, is making sure kids are taken care of. Seeing the difficulties families have gone through experiencing probate court, but also knowing that all of it, this conflict in court is avoidable as well. So my rhetorical question for everybody is, do you have people that you love and want to protect from court and conflict? So as I mentioned today, is the things that we're going to learn about is estate planning, how to protect your assets, the things you cherish the most, and what your next steps are. So I just want to give a disclaimer here. I'm going to back up before I get ahead of myself. And of course, I'm probably not going to be able to, but this is the Smith family. We have John, Samantha, John Jr., and Allison. They're your everyday American family. And I just want to give you a full disclaimer about estate planning and going through these stories, is that they're all really depressing. And I'm sorry for that, but so that's a trigger warning. Things are just going to go downhill from here, but I do it to demonstrate how all of this works in various ways. So just hang with me, okay? So in this situation, let me just advance my screen. That dad is going off on a business trip to France or across whatever other country. He's going away. And mom's like, I've got a business meeting downtown San Diego, so I'm going to go. They call the babysitter. The kids love the babysitter. So they're like, yes, dad, I'm leaving. So off dad goes. He flies away. And hold on. Get my screen to advance here. Mom goes downtown. She puts her phone in her locker and heads out to the gym, and she's going to get on that treadmill. So here she is putting her purse away, and her phone's in there. She has an aneurysm and she dies, unfortunately. The babysitter is frantically trying to get a hold of her, but her phone again is in this locker and no one can get, so she obviously is incommunicado. And dad is in another country. He also is on a plane, so they can't get a hold of him either. So what is the babysitter likely to do in this situation? And to be honest with you, this is the question that was asked of me when I realized that enough is not done with minor children when it comes to estate planning. So let's take a look at, there is no plan. They don't have a plan, John and Samantha. So the babysitter can't get a hold, doesn't know who to call. Mom doesn't answer the phone. She more than likely calls the police. Even though the babysitter has this great relationship with the kids, she has no legal documents. She has no blood relationship with the children. And so the woman that's holding the baby, that's CPS. CPS will place the children into foster care. Meanwhile, dad is frantically trying to get back to the kids. If you could imagine a scenario, or like when I think of my own children in CPS or in San Diego County, it's called Polinsky Center. That is a situation I wouldn't want for 5 minutes, let alone 12 hours or whatever it would take before someone is, but like my family is located and contacted. So so what if they just had a will? So a will does have guardianship nominations in it, but what a will doesn't have is emergency guardians. So in this situation, foster care and CPS would still be in play because there's nobody that would step up into that role, and no one generally has any idea that they're even nominated. And the children are again taken into foster care, temporary foster care, waiting for dad or whomever to be able to get to collect them. So I don't know about you guys, but that is a scenario I would not want for anybody's children, because that would be extremely traumatizing. You don't know where your parents are, and now you're in some either group home or foster care facility, and it would just be not ideal. So emergency guardians are friends or family. It does not have to be family, who live nearby, who can step in to keep your kids legally in the event of emergency. My suggestion is someone who lives 20 to 30 minutes. They can get to your house, they can get to the kids' school or to daycare or whomever, and they can just to get the kids as quickly as possible. The babysitter would also have I create these laminated instructions as to exactly who to call before you call the police, which sounds backwards. But because the police have limited options of what to do in this situation, we want the kids to be with the ideal people that you have nominated to act in these emergencies before the police are called and potentially kids are being placed into foster care. So guardianship is equally about what happens in an emergency as it is about who will raise your children if you can't. And that's where traditional estate planning fails, is that it only goes over the guardianship nominations, the permanent guardianship nominations as who will raise your kids if you can't, and it neglects the whole emergency planning as well. So in this situation, dad is still around, we just can't locate him. So that is the difference between the two of those as well. So what if they had some sort of advanced estate plan where they do have these emergency contacts? So the babysitter, like I said, would have this instruction sheet that I give to all my clients, who to call. He brings his documents, he has the children, keeps them until dad comes, and now they've never left their home and they were never placed with the care of strangers. Cops never had to come to the house and avoid this tragic, traumatic experience for the children, which is already difficult because they lost their mother. So that is, that's the difference right there. And that's something that I strive to create as well. So as I mentioned, things just don't get a lot better. So John, what he does is like, wow, I really need to get my ducks in order. So I'm going to get a life insurance policy and I'm going to sign a will. But he then gets into a car accident and he also passes away. So now what is going to happen? So just a couple of things to consider. Again, in his guardianship documents, that there is a huge misconception about who we need to nominate as our guardians. It does not have to be blood relatives. And sometimes our blood relatives are not the ideal candidates for our personal choices as to who, our personal preferences to who we would want to raise our children. Sometimes, you know, our siblings or our parents, either our parents maybe just not age appropriate or they're unable to re-raise children. Your brothers and your sisters may have different parenting philosophies. So things that I suggest to my clients is to think of when you're wrapping your brain around if you're not here to raise your kids, is to expand your thought process or your process and consider things like, who do you know? Maybe it's friends that share your same values, your same spiritual beliefs, if that's important to you. The same philosophy on finances, not their finances personally, because that's your job as a parent to leave money for your children, but similar philosophies regarding money. The location, this is really important too. Maybe it's not like in my situation, my brother and my sister live out of state. So if my kids were to be given to my brother and sister, they'd have to move schools. And maybe that's a bridge too far in this situation. It would be another change that my kids would have to experience. So maybe you'd want to have somebody that's local, that they could stay in the same school district, the same community that they're used to, and still stay within all their activities or sports or Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, dance, you name it. And nothing would have to change in that regard. As I mentioned, similar parenting ideologies, and also someone that's going to facilitate access to loved ones, those relationships with families. That may be important to you. Some people may not, but whatever is important to you, you want to consider who are those people that are going to facilitate your beliefs, your thought processes, and your values as well. And they might, like I said, they might not be your family. So if anybody wants to, they certainly can chime in, but do you know who, if you have minor kids, that is, who would you want to name as your legal guardians for your children? And I know some people may have already done that, or maybe this is like an additional consideration, like, wow, I don't have temporary guardians. So if anybody wants to jump in and comment in the chat, that if you know people, that's great, like way to go, or like that, just hearing this information, it's made you think about additional people that maybe you haven't considered because you just thought it had to be family members. Thanks, Kate. So as what you had commented here, they don't have to move and they can keep the same school. I think that's a really important consideration for our kids, especially depending on how old they are. Because again, that you're taking them out of the community that they've been raised in, if that's the situation. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. So then we take this further. So now the children move in with their guardians, but what happens with that money that the parents left? So let's consider that here. So result number one with a will is that the kids I'm going to say this, that they get their inheritance immediately. They get their inheritance immediately upon the age of 18. So kids cannot inherit. So I'm going to repeat that again. Kids cannot inherit under the age of 18. So if you have any beneficiary or you have any assets, like any accounts like IRAs, life insurance policies, brokerage accounts, 401ks that you've listed minor children on, your minor children or even grandchildren, know that they cannot inherit. What is required and what the diagram was showing is that it has to go through it goes through probate through a proceeding called guardianship over the estate. And what is required is that the court appoints an individual who has to manage that money for the minor kids until they turn 18. And as soon as they age out, that's what it's called, being aged out, the court no longer has jurisdiction over them. They get lump sum, whatever's left in that account, as soon as they turn 18 years old. So my question for all of you is, if you think back when you were 18 and you inherited a bunch of money, could that have changed your life trajectory?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like even if you got like a smaller amount, like let's say like even 25,000, would that have, if you went to college or maybe you joined the military, maybe that would have pushed that off, or getting a real job, like you might not have done that either because you're like, I don't have to, I got this money. So just want to consider that. So this is option number one. When we leave money to children in those beneficiary designations, those types of accounts, or even in a will, this is what winds up happening. So what is probate? That's kind of like the elephant in the room. What is probate? So probate is a division of our court system, our judicial system, just like traffic, just like civil, like and criminal court and family law. It's a branch of our court system. And what they do is they supervise the process for distributing assets when somebody passes away in one of their roles. The probate court also deals with, so they do estate administration like here. They also do guardianships, conservatorships, trust litigation, and then litigation regarding any of those other three as well. And in San Diego County, there's only 4 probate judges. Riverside County is the same. It's only 4 judges and a ton of cases that they're having to deal with. The statistics that we received in COVID is that over 68% of Americans do not have an estate plan at all. So we talk about even within our own counties in San Diego County or Riverside County, 68% of the population, their estate is going to go through the probate system with 4 calendars, court calendars. And those 4 people are making these decisions that could affect these families. So just keep that in mind as well. So what is a will? Because this is the difference. We're going to talk about what is the difference between a will and a trust. So a will is it's a written instrument in which you're telling the court how you want your assets to be distributed. However, it doesn't control all of your assets, or it certainly doesn't protect your assets from going through probate. Because a lot of people assume, well, I was actually just talking to someone this week. I think I need a will. As long as I have a will, my family doesn't have to worry about anything. Au contraire, as they say in France. Having a will, and I'm going to give you the cheesiest line, and Stark's heard me say it about 1 million times at this point, is that having a will is a one-way ticket to probate. So when there is a will, there is a probate case. There is no way around it, because the only person that can validate a will saying, this is the last will and testament of John Smith, is a judge. Like, they have to say, yep, that's a signature. This is an actual will. And then the only person that can approve of the distribution or the distribution request inside of a will is also a judge. So there's no way to circumvent the probate process from a judge, because they have those 2 really important functions. So again, with the will, and even without a will, the process is the same, by the way. So you're not, by having a will doesn't mean that it goes by faster or it's any cheaper. It's just that you have some control over the distribution of your assets. But do not worry, if you don't have a will, then the state has a plan for you for your asset distributions, and you may not like it. But the cost of probate court is approximately 5% of the value of the estate. So I'm going to use Riverside's fair market value right now, or a couple months ago, of a home. It was because it's like the easiest math for me, $600,000. So if we take just that property, go through probate, it's $30,000. San Diego County, the home values are much higher. So I think the last I saw, and I'm sure the number is different now, and Jake and Kate could tell us, it was about 900,000 or more. And so that's $45,000. So that's $45,000 that's not going to your family. It's getting paid to attorneys, to the executor, to a probate referee. That's a court-appointed official that's on every single case. All of the fees, you have to post legal ad in the newspaper. Like, just think about that for a second. Like the law community, the law is like 25 years behind everybody else. So we have to print an ad in a physical newspaper and give people notice that way. And really, the notice that people, the target, the audience for that notice is creditors, because creditors also get paid before beneficiaries. So in Southern California, the probate process takes about 1 to 2 years. Definitely over that 1 year mark. And that's not for complicated estates, because again, we're talking about only 4 judges with very impacted, busy calendars. So that is a factor of why it takes so long. And also that an estate has to remain open for at least 4 months. The reason for that, it's not because it's a benefit to our beneficiaries or our family members. It's so creditors can file their creditors' claims. So it's just things to consider as well. And if you have property in multiple states, guess what? That is multiple probates have to go on each one of those states, and they all operate very differently. So has anybody here ever gone through the probate process? Maybe with a family member or a friend? I know that lots of people have horror stories going through this process. So if anybody wants to share whether or not they have, I would love to hear it. You can put it in the chat if you want to, if that's easier. If not, then I'll just keep going. So how do kids inherit with a will? Like I said, they can't, for one. All assets will be put into a probate case with guardianships, a guardianship of the estate, and a judge will appoint a financial guardian. Also, the judge will appoint a guardian over the person. So legal guardian, like who's going to take care of this child as well. So who will the judge choose as the children's financial guardian? The answer is we don't know. Like I said, there's four judges. They have wide discretion as to who they would nominate in these situations. And the thing that is most frustrating about the legal process is that you can take the same case down the hallway and to all the different probate judges and get drastically different results, or in any case you get drastically different results. And the reason for that, again, is because they have wide discretion in order to make their orders. So the answer is we just don't know who they're likely to choose. When will children receive the inheritance outright with no protection or guidance, and if they with money through a will, or if someone passes away without a will? Again, that's at age 18 years old. So again, think back when you were 18, were you wise and made wonderful money decisions? But let's see if we can do something better for this scenario. So the kids receive inheritance in a trust. So like that's that lockbox in the back there. And so the money is there to take care of the kids while they're growing up. And then however that the parents, John and Samantha, had allocated for them to receive their money. Maybe it's at certain ages, or maybe they receive their monies inside of their own trusts to protect those assets from divorce or further litigation when they get older. So a living trust, here's the other elephant in the room. What is a trust? Because we hear these words all the time. So a trust is a will substitute. So it avoids probate court as long as it's properly funded. It's got to own real property. It's got not own real property. Well, it does own real property. It's got to have things inside of it. And as long as it's updated regularly, those are my two rules. And so when you do those things, there's no probate court for your family. So these are the three buckets, because this might surprise you as well. So one is that all of your jointly owned assets, we want to put them inside of your trust. And two, your beneficiary designations are updated to your trust as well. So all of your assets, whether it's real property, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, your investment accounts, they all need to be in alignment with one another, with whatever your goals are. If it's to avoid probate when you pass away, then we need to have a cohesive plan. And then all of your assets are, once you pass away and you do these things here, all of your assets are immediately available for your loved ones and no court is involved. So other considerations, what about incapacity? This is the big one, because it's not just talking about if you have a stroke or dementia. So I'm going to tell you, I had a client in her 30s who slipped and fell in her bathroom, hit her head, and had a traumatic brain injury. Or I've had clients who they were in the military and they experienced PTSD and TBI as a result of their service overseas. So incapacity is extremely important because, again, that is one of the functions of probate court, is what happens if an adult can't make their financial and medical decisions for themselves. That's called a conservatorship. So if we have documents, it's another court proceeding. So you can imagine it's more cost and it's time consuming and it's not user friendly. So if we have those documents in place before any of these tragedies occur, it will help out our family members because they'll know what to do and they don't have to appear in court to get certain kind of court orders. So those documents include, which by the way, every adult over the age of 18 should really have. We have a video that we're going to be posting soon about kids going to college because they're adults. Once they graduate, they're 18 years old, they're considered legal adults. So we as parents don't have access to their medical information or even their bank accounts unless we're on those too. So powers of attorney, A HIPAA authorization, I'll explain what that is. Advanced healthcare directive. Oops. An advanced healthcare directive. So these replace the necessity for a conservatorship. A HIPAA authorization and advanced healthcare directive, they work hand in hand with one another. So advanced healthcare directive is what are your medical orders? Like what would you want to happen in different scenarios if you're incapacitated, whether it's about life support or even organ donation or hospice care or any of those kinds of things. And HIPAA authorization is allowing third parties to have access to your medical information, which with our privacy laws, they wouldn't normally have. The reason why you'd want a HIPAA authorization is just so that other people can have access and be able to talk to your doctors to find out what's going on, then to utilize that information to also make medical decisions on your behalf. I call HIPAA authorizations can also be considered family diplomacy. And what I mean by that is, and I'll use my own example, is my mom's not on my advanced healthcare directive. If she was sitting right here beside me, she would know that. The reason for that, it's not because I don't love my mother, and it's because she could not in that situation make those decisions, even if I it's all spelled out for her. It'd be too hard. But she's on my HIPAA authorization, so she could call my doctor and find out what's going on with my status or her, what's happening, without having to go through another party. And I know that would cause a lot of internal conflict amongst my husband and my family. And so that's what I mean, is you can use these kinds of things as family diplomacy. And your power of attorney is handling your finances, whether you're in the hospital and you're incapacitated or you have dementia for ongoing care, that they have the ability to do that as well. And also what should also be mentioned here is that in a well-written trust, there's also incapacity planning in that as well, which, by the way, most banks prefer that way than through a standalone power of attorney document. The reason for that is that when you have a trust, what you should have also is that your bank accounts are owned by the trust, meaning that they're the account owner. And so you already, through your trust, have it set up where it says, if I'm deemed incapacitated, my successor trustees can act in my place to take care of my finances. Your bank accounts are in your trust. It's a seamless process to get those third parties involved in access to your bank accounts. So your mortgage is paid, your medical expenses are paid, utilities, daycare, your car, so nothing's repossessed and leaving you in a huge bind if you do regain capacity. So lesson number one is that I truly believe that our kids are our most important assets and that we need to protect them and do as much as we can for them. And guardianship is equally about what happens in an emergency as it is who will raise our children in the long term. So I create emergency ID cards. I also do healthcare authorizations, so third parties can take my kids to their doctors, like ongoing regular care, to the dentist, to the eye doctor, or whatever it is that they may need, so that they don't experience inconsistency with their care. Wills do not avoid probate court, and probate is it's public. And what I mean by that is when someone passes away with a will, the very first thing you're required to do, this is a will, I should have it like here, it says will, you have to go deposit it at the probate courthouse. What that means is that you file it to a degree, but they don't stamp it like they stamp every court document. They don't stamp it because they're going to ruin the document itself, the authenticity of the document itself. But all wills are public record. So I have, for example, Babe Ruth's will. I have Jackie Kennedy Onassis's will. I have Anna Nicole Smith, who's now making a comeback on Netflix. And I've seen Jimi Hendrix's will, and it's not because I have some in with Hollywood agents or some their sports agents. It's because it's all public. So what happens is that you deposit that will, anyone could go look at it, and they take a look at the petition that's also required to be filed. Now they know not only the names of the beneficiaries, where they're located, their contact information, the approximation of the assets. All of these people start getting contacted. All the beneficiaries getting contacted by loan sharks. Like, hey, it looks like you're going to get an inheritance. What if I told you can get your inheritance today rather than waiting those 2 years at a low interest rate of 75% or whatever it is? Because I've seen that happen before, and it can be, I wouldn't want my family members to be exposed to that. And then the just public knowledge, and it's a costly process. But wills do have an important function when it comes to minor kids, is that it does outline like the permanent guardianship nominations there, which is important. Another important lesson is a review of your assets must be a part of your estate planning conversation, because a document alone is not enough to protect you. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So and Stars heard this example before, but the previous firm that I was working in, I got involved in this case at the very end of it. And in the divorce, it was a family law case. In the divorce, the husband got his life insurance awarded to him because everything was community property. And shortly after, it was a very contentious divorce. And shortly after it was finalized, he got sick, and while in the hospital, he executed a deathbed will or trust. And I don't remember which it is, but I'm going to share with you why it's not important that I don't remember. There's a reason why I don't remember, because it didn't wind up mattering. And he wrote in his will or trust that all of my assets to my adult sons, which would included his life insurance policy. He passed away. His brother contacted the life insurance company, said, hey, my brother passed away. I've been nominated as the guardian or as the executor or the trustee. I would like that the money, please, to give to my nephews. And they say, what happened was they're like, yeah, we've already paid that money out. And then he's like, excuse me? It got paid out to the ex-wife. I'm sorry, what? It got paid out to the ex-wife because that was who was listed on the beneficiary designation. Clearly it seems as though that's not what he intended, because he put in his will or trust that he wanted everything to go to his kids. But that beneficiary designation form is what the marching orders are for those financial institutions. So it doesn't matter what was in his estate planning documents, because he never updated that beneficiary designation form. So that's why it's so important that we've got to look at everything and know what's at play, because it's essentially, if you don't have these conversations about the types of assets you have, or even the approximate amounts that you have, we're essentially planning with your arms cut off, because it's only half of the conversation. And then also it's creating that treasure map for whomever that you nominate to take care of your things, either in your incapacity or in your death, to know exactly what you have. So there's no guesswork, because the last thing, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, the last thing you want is for your assets to go to the Department of Unclaimed Property. California has its own Department of Unclaimed Property, and so does the federal government. When I called the Department of Unclaimed Property in November of 2021, that amount was over $12 billion. Because what happens is that financial institutions can't keep accounts open forever if there's no activity on it. They'll send out letters saying, hey, there's no activity. If we don't get a response, then we're going to close this account. And that money gets siphoned to the Department of Unclaimed Property. The federal government's account is over $58 billion. That's with a B. It's in a tremendous amount of other people's money. It is fun, actually, because I just found $75 myself in the Department of Unclaimed Property, using my maiden name, is to go in every state that you've lived in by every name that you utilize. So if you're married, go look in your maiden name, even where you attended college, wherever your first job was. There may be money out there for you. So I found for my husband, it was well over, before we started dating, so that was over 10 years ago, it was an old utility refund for $25. I mean, it's still $25. That's his name. So go, as your homework tonight, when you get off of here, go and look it up to see if there's any money out there that you're aware of. And they make it fairly easy to go get it. It was instantaneous for my husband. So we don't want to leave the government's, federal or state, any more money. So it's really important to have that treasure map. So just a little bit about myself here is that I'm a part of a network of personal family lawyers. And so I really strive to keep to understand what your goals are, and to understand your family dynamics as well. And it's my goal, and it should be every estate planning attorney's goal, is to make sure that every stone is not left unturned, and giving you the ultimate peace of mind that your loved ones and your assets are going to be kept out of court and conflict. So that is that. Does anybody have any questions?
Colleen, this was amazing. I learned a few things as well, and we've had our trust set in place for a couple of years now. We'll definitely have to go back and review it. This has been great.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
I'd be curious to know a little bit about some of the tax implications, like what, are there benefits to having things in a trust? I mean, we get to not pay probate costs, which is amazing. What about taxes?
Well, it just depends on the type of asset that you're talking about. And how when you transfer it into the trust, you want to maximize on the step up in basis and having that, especially with real property, so that the property that we leave behind for our loved ones, that they don't have these huge capital gains, so that they could actually afford to take the house if they wanted to, and that they don't have this huge property reassessment as well. The IRS though, and it depends on the assets. They just recently changed the laws as to IRS and 401ks, and making it is more of a, I don't want to say disadvantage, but it's with the Secure Act. It makes it more difficult, because what we used to be able to do before the Secure Act, which got passed in 2019, is that you could inherit your parents' IRAs and 401ks and never take a distribution. So if you never took a distribution off of it, the IRS never got paid, because all of those payments off of an IRA or 401k, it's tax deferred until you withdraw the money. So we could take those IRAs. I could take an IRA that I inherited from my mom or my dad prior to 2019, not take anything off of it, and pass it along to my kids. So that's like 2 generations of no IRS tax, no federal or federal taxes. Federal government, as you can imagine, Uncle Sam didn't like that. So they changed how we can inherit 401ks and IRAs, where now if we inherit it from our parents, our spouses we're exempt from, and minor children as well, is that you now have to liquidate those accounts within 10 years. And what that means is that, if you could imagine, if you have a huge IRA, like you've been saving it for your entire lifetime, it's over $1 million, and you've got one kid, they've got to withdraw all of it in 10 years. That adds on to their own personal federal taxes. So there's a lot of different things that we consider and we talk about when it comes to estate planning. And that's what I mean by we got to know what type of assets you have, so we can get into a more detailed analysis on how that would work and how our families and loved ones would inherit those.
Maurice has a question too. So what is Medicaid recovery? Does it have anything to do with POA and HIPAA?
It does not. This is, again, the federal government will get its money type of situation. So with Medicaid, for example, if you need long-term care or go into a rehabilitation facility, those things are expensive. And so what they do is they pay out on those, and they'll put a lien on your home, that when you pass away, they'll get those monies recovered from them. There is additional estate planning. There's types of trusts that you can place your home in. You have to do it in a lot of well ahead of time, because the IRA, the federal government has a look back policy on how far it goes back, and now analyzing these kinds of things. But it's completely separate from your power of attorney and your HIPAA authorization. Those are just who's making your decisions if you're incapacitated. Medicaid is completely different. It's the payment of your medical care.
The next question was from Bo. He wanted to know if the age of 18, when your kids get their inheritance, is that state or federal?
That is state. So federal government is not a part of the probate process.
Are there any states that you find to be more advantageous or disadvantageous in terms of inheritance laws? Does California tend to be rough as far as that goes?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so California is not probate friendly because of how long it takes and how expensive it is. I heard Arizona. I'm only licensed in California, so I can only tell you war stories that I've heard. Arizona is not probate friendly. I was told Texas is a little bit linear in terms of the process and the cost. I could imagine Florida is not probate friendly. I would imagine New York is not probate friendly, because those are some of our most highly populated areas. Other than that, I don't really know. I haven't heard anything other than those handful of states. That's a good question. Anybody else? These are all really good questions. Michael, I see your comment, and Star can get a hold of you, and I would love to set up something to talk to you, and you can get some more information too.
And also I believe you had mentioned it as well. I think how Kate and I have it set up for us that have young kiddos, you know, they're not all getting that lump sum all at 18.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're getting it at 21, 25, 30. We're not going to allow them to go spend it all in one place all at once, right?
And here's the beauty of it too, it's just another consideration. And this is what I remind my clients is that, this is another good question. What is a revocable living trust? And I'm going to talk about that. And so I had mentioned one of the most important things to do with the trust is to update it regularly. I was talking to clients, I met with new clients last week. They brought me their trust and it literally had dust on it. And that's a problem because that means it was not looked at for over 15 years. Their assets have radically changed. Their family has changed. Their kids are no longer minors. And to your point is that the beauty of a revocable trust, which means it's changeable, is that you could go back and revisit it when we especially with minor kids. We don't know what our kids are going to wind up needing or the lifestyles that they're going to wind up having. And having several children, you might have children with different needs. So you can personalize it and change it to whatever reflective of whatever your kids' needs are. So that is one of the tips I give my clients. It's like, listen, God willing, you were going to review this in at least 3 years. Some clients, we do it every year because their assets are constantly changing. Like think of real estate investors, like their portfolio is always changing. So we got to make sure that their real estate's always in their trust. So good is better than not done. So let's get something in place and know you can come back and change it. And especially we don't know what your kids are going to need if they're 5 years old to when they become teenagers or even young adults. And your trust should reflect all of your life changes as well. So it's constantly evolving because your needs are always going to be changing.
Have the blueprint and modify from there.
Exactly.
We've got to make some changes and updates.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. And it done is better than perfect because there's no such thing as a perfect plan because everything is always going to be changing. So it just to get over that, like that mental fatigue of like, oh my gosh, all of these decisions. And then you wind up making 0 decisions, which is what you don't want.
So Ed has a really good question. What's the very first process if a will and a trust are in place when somebody passes away? What's the first thing that happens?
So the first thing that happens is that is getting the funeral accomplished, and they should have what their funeral preferences are. And during that time, you're also waiting for the death certificate, which by the way, takes weeks to get. So then I have this whole entire, it's right here because I cleaned my desk and I found everything. I have this whole checklist. It's 7 pages of what happens when someone passes away. You got to notify the credit bureau agencies and Social Security. There's all these like admin things that you need to do. Someone has a trust, then you provide, in California, you have to provide all potential beneficiaries a copy of the trust. And then who's ever the successor trustee is got to figure out, okay, what kind of assets are there? What are my marching orders and how this gets distributed? And then start making the distributions from there. The first things that are always paid out are taxes. So that if, like, let's say someone passes away in June, there may be state and federal income taxes that are still owed from January till June. In California, it shocks me every time I say this, is that there's no estate tax. So like knock on wood, that stays the situation forever. But the federal tax or the federal government does have an income tax threshold, or income tax, an estate tax threshold. And that's for households, for married couples, the threshold is $25 million. So anything above $25 million that gets taxed at a rate of 46% upon your death. For an individual, it's $12.4 million. And so under Trump's administration, he swung it all the way up to 25 for a joint. Under Barack Obama, it was somewhere around 8 million for a married couple. And they're talking about moving that back. The $25 million coupon, if you want to think about it that way, that cap is sunsets in 2025. So we're thinking it's going to be around the same amounts as what President Obama had, but we just don't know for sure yet what they're likely to do. So, yes, we can send you a copy of that checklist. And that's specifically though, for people who passed away without with a will or without a will, but the same couple of steps are the same, to start out, like putting credit freezes and calling credit card companies and stopping those accounts and contacting Social Security, contacting the DMV, all those kinds of things as well.
And Colleen, we mentioned, like bank accounts, like my business is in our trust as well. Not only having a trust in place, very important, but correct me if I'm wrong, we need to go and contact each of those accounts and ensure that the trust is put in place on that end, correct?
Except for your business accounts, because ideally your business is also owned by the trust. So when you have a business, you don't change any of the business assets because those are protected with the asset protection associated with under our business laws. But then your business is owned by the trust and protected by the trust as well, if that makes sense. But all of your other assets that are owned by you individually, if you have a trust, they either need to be owned outright by the trust or the trust is somewhere as a beneficiary to those assets.
Maurice had a really good question, which is, can you explain to us what is a revocable living trust?
Yes. So revocable means that you can change it anytime during your lifetime, or even with married couples, depending on what you have options too, is that you can change everything even upon the death of the first spouse. So it just depends on what your preferences are. Sometimes you don't want the surviving spouse to be able to change absolutely everything, because what if there's a new lady that comes into town and now all of a sudden, like, she's got this influence, or the pool boy or whomever, and all of a sudden all of the assets are left to the pool boy's friends and not to your kids. But a revocable trust means that you can change it at any point as often as you like. There is a trust that it becomes irrevocable upon your death, meaning you can't change it, or if there's two spouses, upon the death of both spouses. And there's an advanced estate planning tool for individuals that are over that $25 million threshold to avoid estate taxes. But other than that, most of us, until we make those bazillion dollars, we won't need or utilize a irrevocable trust, if that makes sense.
And I thought I saw a question or a comment, this trust, it can be very lengthy. It can be short, depending on what your family's needs are, but it can be very complex, right? And that's why you're here. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the reasons it can become complex is also considering family dynamics. And like blended families have additional considerations, or maybe just the complexities of our families have additional considerations. And also the types of assets that we have you may have different plans for each type of asset. We've got to be as specific as possible.
And kind of along that vein, Brian was asking, like, how specific can you get in terms of like funds? Can we say, I want these funds to be used for just tuition or just a mortgage, or is it just kind of willy-nilly ATM style?
Well, so depending on what your preferences are and how you have it all, like, I'm going to use you guys as an example, both you, Jake and Kate, is that with your kids, so that you have it at delayed distributions with certain ages that they receive a lump sum. So in between all of those ages, the money is still there to be utilized for the care of your kids, whatever their needs they may be, as it relates to health, education, maintenance, and support, because that's IRS stuff, because it's called a discretionary trust. So as long as it relates to those kinds of things, the trustee can make those kind of distributions. What I do with my trust is I give further wishes and hopes as to what you want to utilize those monies for. Maybe it's that you want your kids to be able to have access to funds to purchase their first property, especially here in Southern California. Maybe it's if you can't, and contact Jake and Kate. Maybe it's to pay for their weddings. Maybe it's to give them seed money to start a business or to go to art school or whatever it is. Like, to put in these guidelines, because we as parents or even aunts and uncles, we have it all in our head how we want things to go. And if you're not specific enough, you can't assume that the person that you've left behind is going to be able to read your mind or your thoughts. So the more suggestions that we can give, the better off, I think, too. And having these conversations before we're gone is so important. One of the things that we do that is unique is that we do recordings of our clients. So you have the opportunity not only to exchange stories, really important family stories, but also to go into these, like, this is why we've had it set up this way. You know, this is what's important to us and why. And so now that these individuals that you've nominated to be in these roles have additional information, and I could imagine it's going to be very well received, because they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, now we know exactly what we're supposed to do. And also, like, and to the same vein, not keeping this stuff secret. So and the reason for that is that the last thing you want is your documents to be somewhere in your house that no one knows where they are. And so you have a situation where maybe they're going to probate because you never shared your estate planning documents, or that it's in a safe, you know, it's a safe deposit box that nobody knew you even had, or where to find the key. Or now, if you think about it, how much information is stored on our phones? Very first thing that, mine's not, but so bad example, usually you turn on your phone and you have to put in your password. And so if nobody knows your password to your phone or to your computer, everything is emailed to us now. Nothing is mailed. They don't want to send us the mail because they don't want to pay for the stamp. They don't want to pay for the envelope, the paper, and the envelope stuffer. So they email it to us. And if the people that you've nominated do not have access to your email, they do not know where you bank, they won't have any of that information. So it's sharing this stuff, and you don't have to like share everything, but just like, hey, you are my successor trustee, or you're in one of my intended successor trustees, and this is where you can find the documents, and this is my attorney, and she has copies of everything, and so just contact her and she can help you out, or whatever, whomever it is. But it's so important. And that's one of the things that we do as well, is that with the blessings of our client, that we notify the people they've nominated. So if they ever hear of something happening, they know where to get their instructions from, so that they can act immediately.
That is so incredibly smart and just genius, because I got a huge safe in the closet, and that trust has been in there for the last 2 years.
So
But I don't think we ever gave my sister that combination.
Oh
did we,
my
Jake?
gosh.
yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, and I tell you this because I had to sit with a woman who lost her daughter, and her daughter was in her early 40s. Just suddenly she died. And she's staring at her daughter's phone, like, what is on her phone? And she brought her friends in, and they flipped the house, and they found old documents, because everything is on this phone and computer that's sitting in front of her, and she doesn't know the password. And like, just at an absolute loss. So it's making sure, you know, I know like a lot of people have like their little books with all their passwords, but tell people that you've got this kind of stuff. Another like a funny story I have is with my best friend. Her parents are successful like investors, and her mom was an accountant for a biotech firm down in San Diego. Her dad is a nuclear physicist. So these people are smart people. She goes to visit them. They retired up to Northern California. We were still in law school, and her mom says, I just want to let you know that all of our passwords and account numbers are in our vinyl records collection. She's like, what? First of all, which record? Because they had many records. And she's like, if something would have happened to you, I would never have known that you stored accounts with millions of dollars information in these vinyl records. Like, that has to change right now. But it's the same type of situation.
Imagine finding that at Goodwill.
Yeah. Could you imagine? Could you? Well, another funny story. I was talking to this guy out of Phoenix. He has this computer program. It's like a vault that you can upload pictures and like all of your records and stories to. And the reason why he started this was from his own father-in-law. When he passed away, there was no like paper trail or like the treasure map that I like to call. And when his wife cleaned out her dad's home, she found this little safe deposit key. So she took it to his bank that he's banked at for decades. And they're like, that's not our key. She's like, that's weird. Like, where would it be? Like, where he's always banked here. So she went around to all the banks in the area. It was not their key. So he said it was an itch she could not like scratch, like she would not leave it alone. So she just kept venturing out further and further and further and further until she found the bank that it belonged to, opened it up, and it was stock certificates to Apple. Like if she had just like left it alone, I mean, it was a lot of money because he bought these stocks forever ago, but it's the same kind of thing. Like she didn't even know he A, had those stocks, or B, had this other safe deposit box. So it's just like making it easy and like thinking about these kinds of things for our families.
So in having these periodic conversations with the people that you name within that trust, right? That'll be able to take action when needed.
Yeah.
And also maybe giving them a thumb drive with your trust on it.
You
maybe,
can.
or-
The only thing is like to keep in mind is that you may choose in a couple of years that they're not going to be your successor trustee anymore because relationships change. Or like if for your guardians, maybe they move out of state and they're no longer like a good candidate. So you don't necessarily have to give them the documents, but tell them where they're located. Or tell them like, what I do is just send out a letter saying, hey, they don't know, like, because I always suggest you have a roster of people in each role, at least 3 people deep. So if something happens to one of those people, you've got somebody on deck who can help out, or that they just can't do it. Like I had a situation where the trustee on my client's mother's trust, his wife died at the same time, and he's just like not able to tell you what day of the week it is, let alone manage another trust. So they might just not be able to do it and not give you like the care or the time that your family needs. So it's good to have like the full roster. I just send out a letter. Like they don't know, like their first, second, or third, just like, hey, you've been nominated to play this role. I've got the documents. So if you ever hear of anything happening, like contact me. Here's my, we've got everything electronically. And in terms of an emergency, a copy is better than nothing. So you don't have to, but you always can at least tell them where your stuff is.
And to, just so everybody knows, Warren Buffett is quoted as saying that he revises his trust and estate and everything every 5 to 6 years, and he doesn't sign or change anything without letting his children read it, so they're all aware. So we have lots of fun facts on our Instagram page about Warren Buffett and different topics and stuff like that. So,
and that's important because and I suggest this too to my clients, especially with older kids, is that you may provide for your kids differently. If you have 3 kids, like I'll like use my family, myself as an example. My parents helped pay for law school. They didn't do that for my other kids, their other kids, because they didn't go. And so they have paid during their lifetime, like for my benefit, a lot more than my other siblings. So I'm treated differently. But if they never told me that, though I know I'm the favorite, I might assume that it's because dad didn't love me enough. You know what I mean? And now I'm going to go and torpedo my relationship with my brother and my 2 sisters. So it's having these conversations. So like Warren Buffett's suggestion is having these conversations with our families, letting them know what you've done, how it works. Because I facilitate family meetings myself. Like if you want to do a Zoom call, you want to bring everybody into the office after we sign everything, so we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen, is to, so everybody knows how it works and why things are laid out the way that they are, so they can hear it from the horse's mouth and to make assumptions, because it's when we make assumptions, we all know what happens. And that relationships can be ruined because people do a lot of weird things when it comes to money, even $10, you know what I mean? Or the tchotchkes that have 0 value, but because I love that little porcelain puppy more than you did, or whatever, and grandma knew it, like can ruin relationships. And I've seen it. So it's really important just to start having these conversations with our families. So I agree with Warren Buffett.
So again, this has been mind-blowing. It's been amazing. We're over an hour now. Do we have any more questions? Anybody got any final questions they'd love to ask?
We're also going to provide you guys, I'll provide you with like a recap email where I'm going to try to get this. So we've got this recording. We're going to try to polish it up a little bit and get this back over to you guys so you can rewatch it. And I'll be sure to include Colleen's contact information. She also, Star just dropped it in the chat there. So how to contact her and how to follow her on any socials. But then I'll also get a copy of that checklist that we had talked about earlier and provide that to you guys.
Right here. It's a probate checklist, but again, the first couple of sections apply to anybody who passes away.
Hey, Colleen, if I could add something, great information, by the way. And somebody asked, what happens when somebody dies? I can tell you from personal experience that I'm a trauma intervention volunteer. So we're called whenever there's a tragic event, and typically it's a death, and oftentimes a death in the home, a senior, whatever. And it's amazing that couples don't even share, do they want to be cremated or buried? And what kind of arrangements, and they don't want to have those conversations. I can tell you firsthand the personal trauma the family goes through in making these decisions. Because what people don't realize is if it's a death in the home, that's of natural causes, nobody comes and takes that body if it's left in the, their living room floor. And so the people have to make a decision, what are they going to do? And that's where we come out and try to help them. But if there's no discussions, no documentation as to what to do, it makes it problematic.
Right.
And so, the passwords right on. People like, how do I get in a password? Into their cell phone first. How do we get into a bank account if I need to do something? This happens over and over and over again. So the information you're sharing is invaluable because I can tell you, I've seen it at least 100 times on, they're in the moment and they can't get the answers that they need. And people are limited. First responders are limited. What can we do? Because they got to contact who's their, first point of contact, and we don't know if they don't know.
Right.
And so what you're sharing is important, and it's good information for everybody to hear. Also, just letting them know who to be notified, if something happens. Some people they want notified, some people they don't, but they've got to communicate and share so people know that are responding on scene.
Stan, thank you.
Yep, great information.
Awesome.
All right. I know, Colleen, I know your information was shared in the chat, but do you want to go ahead and share it here as well? Provide any last takeaways?
Sure. It looks like Star just put her email address in there. It's csd@protectyourfamily.law, and our phone number, it's a textable line as well. I'll make sure if anybody's interested, I'll give Kate our calendaring link. It just makes it easier. I know a lot of people just prefer that way too, but Star's that friendly voice that would answer that phone to help you out too.
I love chatting with everybody.
Everyone
It's
loves
really hard to be quiet the whole time she's talking because I have things to say too.
So we'll provide that if you'd like that as well, and you've got our phone number and our email address. But I just want to thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to your MVPs here this evening and taking the time out of your day.
It's been so great. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate everyone that joined us this evening.
And if you